Evening and welcome to live coverage of the RWB International Constructors Championship from here at the Nurburgring in Germany. I'm Rob and we've just come to the very end of qualifying here on a damp but drying track as Samuel Kruger goes quickest of everyone. And we're just waiting on the last few drivers to quickly finish the laps they're on, as Alex Goncalves has gone 17th quickest, Reitzmer 5th, Kajawski I think is in 6th place, indeed he is at the moment, as Damien Lowe goes 15th, and we're just waiting on the last few drivers to finish setting lap times. And I'm joined tonight by Ollie, who I believe is also handling the cameras tonight as well. So
yeah, I'm handling the cameras tonight, folks. So hopefully I can give you some good coverage. Yeah, and hopefully it'll be good.
Yeah, Kostadinov has just gone 5th quickest in the Lexus. We're currently on board with Debug at the moment, who is in 16th place. There's Kostadinov's Lexus. It's still Sam Kruger taking on pole position, which means that the Porsche of Jack Alexander, who has won every single round so far this season, is not on pole for, I believe, the first time this season. Do a quick rundown of the grid for you in a sec, but it's still Porsche at the top of the standings in the Constructors Championship at the moment, thanks to the efforts of both Jack and James Lacey in the 997 car. Lacey qualifying just behind in 3rd place. We've also got regulars such as Crawford Brown, Hugo Gomez, Eddie Warden, all up there at the sharp end of the field. The Nissans, after a relatively quiet meeting in Mazzano just last week, are also up there in the top 10 with Birch, Reitzman and Kozlowski in 6th, 7th and 8th respectively. So it's going to be a very interesting race today indeed. I'll do a quick rundown of the grid for you. It's Sam Kruger on pole position ahead of Jack Alexander. James Lacey is in 3rd ahead of Crawford Brown in the Lexus. Then it's Todor Kostadinov in another one of the Lexus RCF GT3s. And then we've got the Nissan trio of Dan Birch, Berno Reitzmer, and Kajawski in 8th place, and then we have Hugo Gomez for BMW and Eddie Warden for Lamborghini rounding out the top 10. Toby Atkinson is in 11th place in the, I was going to say the slowest of the Nissan GTRs, but that's pretty relative, quite frankly. Then it's Mad Al, very good qualifying session from him, in 12th place ahead of Kevin Shepherd for BMW. Will Day is in 14th place in the Aston Martin ahead of Sergio Lemke in the Mercedes. Then it's Billy Hutchinson in the 3rd of the Porsches, just ahead of Debug in the Bentley and Chris Brook in the McLaren. Harry Hottie is in 19th place, and then Carapo is rounding out the top 20 in the McLaren. Damien Lowe is in 21st on the grid ahead of Craig Gilbert Wood. Then it's Gianni Lenz in the Aston Martin ahead of Andre Goncalves in the McLaren. Giorgio Minga is in 25th place in the number 4 Mercedes ahead of Nate Newcomer in the Jaguar. Then we have Pinners in 27th place for Audi ahead of Xavier Eugeni in another one of the Jaguars. And rounding out the field is Damien Vilk in the 23 Lamborghini and Simon Tribeck in the 81 Bentley. So that's the whole field done and dusted with about 35 or so seconds to spare.
Yeah.
Which
do you reckon it'll be an interesting race today? Or
yeah. The track's greasy at the moment, and the weather in the practice server last night was very stereotypical of that of the Eifel region. It was pretty much all forms of weather you could get, and with about 10 minutes difference between the lot of them. Not quite the hailstorm that stopped the Nurburgring 24 hours a few years ago, which was quite amusing, nor the snow which we saw in the NLS a year or two ago as well, which saw a whole event actually being cancelled altogether.
Oh yeah, but yeah, we are underway now.
Yeah, coming through the former Coca-Cola curve. It's been renamed since then, and coming onto the pit straight now. They are just waiting for the lights to change, which they do now, and it's a long run down to turn 1 here. Very tight hairpin, and it's Sam Kruger who has got the jump on everyone so far. Looks as if he's going to be able to hold on to the position. Crawford Brown, they're going around the outside of Jack Alexander and James Lacey. Great start from Crawford, moving up to 2nd place. James Lacey down in 4th place till he's dropped back a place. Then we've got, I think that's one of the Nissans behind him, as it's all kicking off here on the opening lap. It's been a good clean run actually through the Mercedes arena so far, as Sam Kruger puts the hammer down, so to speak, in the Mercedes AMG GT3, heading up into Valvoline curve now. Quite a quick left-hander into the slower, tighter forward curve. You can see Jack Alexander going down to 1st gear there in the Porsche. Heading down the hill now towards the Dunlop Care, the banked hairpin here at the bottom end of the circuit. There's a variety of lines being employed. Brown taking a slightly tighter line, Kruger taking a slightly wider line. Now it's up the hill now through the very quick Michael Schumacher S, because, well, seems only fitting to have the fastest sweepers on the track named after the 7-time world champion. Kruger on the outside as they head into the Michelin curve now. Crawford Brown going to have a look up the inside, and Jack Alexander's going to try and make it 3 wide, but Kruger's got the inside for the Vottsteiner curve, and manages to, the 3 of them just about managed to hold on to 1st, 2nd and 3rd, and this is bringing James Lacey into the mix as well in the other Porsche. Heading up the hill now to the NGK chicane, as Crawford Brown makes a bit of a mess of that and goes very wide indeed, actually cutting the chicane altogether, meaning that James Lacey has a bit of a run on the outside there, but not quite able to get the position, I don't think. In fact, James Lacey he's managed to get Crawford on the exit of the turn there, making use of the Porsche's traction. Eddie Warden's had a good start as well, up into 5th place. Birch up into 6th. Kostadinov's dropped down a couple of positions to 7th. And the remainder of the Nissan quartet are filling up the top 10. Nate Newcomer with the fastest lap of the race so far in the big Jaguar. As I can see, Damien Lowe is in the pits right now at the moment. The pit window isn't open, so whether that's a technical issue on his end, I'm not 100% sure. Damien being based in Singapore, meaning that he is pushing the technology rather hard indeed, but he also has very good internet, I know for a fact. Debug currently in 17th at the moment. You can just see Harry Hottie behind him there in the Lamborghini, and Carl Powell is right there with them as well. There's a Porsche there going a bit wide, and hits Hottie, this Lamborghini, and that's going to drop Hottie back a good few positions. No doubt the stewards might be having a little bit of a look at that one, methinks. Pinners is doing pretty well so far, up into 16th place in the 46 Audi. And speaking of which, there's going to be another 46 Audi coming soon to ACC in the form of Valentino Rossi's new car, the WRT Audi R8 GT3 Evo 2. So that's going to be very exciting to see how that handles. Meanwhile, James Lacey is up the inside of Crawford Brown into turn 1. A little bit of contact there. Definite pinch points on the circuit. Of course, it's not how the original turn 1 complex used to be here at the Nurburgring when they redeveloped the circuit back in the early 2000s. And we see Nate Newcomer in the Jaguar having a bit of a look at Sergio Lemke, trying to go around the outside here in the arena section in the big old Jag. Not the strongest part of the track, I will admit, for the Jaguar, but Nate has got the position there from Sergio, who has dropped back a couple more positions. I'm wondering if there is a potential setup issue on the car, maybe. You're looking at Hugo Gomez in 10th place at the moment in the highest placed of the BMW M4 GT3s. The big M4, which is going to be like quite a few of the cars in this field racing at the 12 Hours of Sebring this weekend in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. I'll be back up in London producing some of it. Meanwhile, Sam Kruger and Jack Alexander very close now, and thought Jack was going to have a little look up the inside of the Coca-Cola curve there. Not quite close enough to realistically be able to pull it off, but getting a fantastic exit there in the Porsche. He's alongside almost as they head down the pit straight. I wonder if he's going to have a go at trying to outbrake Kruger into turn 1. He's having a think about it. Not quite able, is he? Oh, not quite able to get the job done this time by. Of course, the pit window hasn't opened yet. And we're less than 10 minutes into the race and it's all kicked off. Alexander's going to have a go round the outside at the exit of the Mercedes arena. He's just about got the position there. He's going to come across now over to the right-hand side to be on the racing line for the Valvoline curve. And Jack Alexander there taking the lead in the 21 Porsche. It's now Kruger leading from... Sorry, Alexander leading, excuse me, from Kruger. And Lacey, Brown, Warden, Birch, Kostadinov, Kozlowski, Atkinson, and Gomez. Been one hell of a start to the race so far. We're currently looking at Billy Hutchinson in the Porsche with the rather noticeable silhouette of Simon Trebek's Bentley filling his rearview mirror at the moment, as Hutchinson was involved in a little bit of a coming together earlier on as Harry Hottie in the 33 Lamborghini.
Also, the pit window's just opened.
Yes, indeed it has, as Trebek, we just see from onboard Hottie's car, gets past Hutchinson for 18th place at the Michelin curve. Now it's on this long run up the... I was going to say back straight. It's not really a straight as such. There is a noticeable kink there, and then it's through the original variant of the NGK chicane before they realised it was actually still a bit too fast for F1 cars in the 1980s, and ended up building a tighter version, although I believe the more flowing version is still used for bike races on the Grand Prix Strecke. Although I'm fairly certain in German that would actually be Grosse Preis Strecke.
More better than me.
I really don't. Meanwhile, James Lacey in the Porsche has just dropped back to 4th place behind Crawford Brown, and Lacey running a very WEC-esque livery in what has become the effectively the Porsche corporate colours for especially the WEC side of the program. They've just been finishing the prologue, actually, at Sebring, and there's a lot less red on the WEC car than there is on Lacey's car, so I stand corrected by that. Currently looking at Chris Brook at the moment in 14th place in the McLaren, who's got Pinners half a second up the road in the Audi. And then right on his rear wing is Debug in the big Bentley. Chris still just about holding on to the position at the moment. I've noticed that Nate Newcomer's just moved up into 16th place as well in the Jaguar. And thankfully for Nate, we're on one of the sections of track where the Jaguar is at its strongest because there aren't many slow, tight corners. Going through the chicane now. Crikey, having to really back out of it is Nate as Debug and Brook were side by side. And in fact, Debug gets the position there from Brook. That's bringing Trebek in the Bentley into the mix, as well as, I think that was Carapo coming into the pits there in the McLaren for his first pit stop. Indeed it was. That's going to drop him down the field a wee bit.
That Bentley's got a little bit of straight line speed, but nothing compared to that Jaguar. As the Jaguar goes through turn 1. So far, what do we think on the race?
It's been very interesting so far. I mean, going back to your points about the Jaguar is essentially the kind of the Swiss equivalent of a few people in a shed. Not to take anything away from Emil Fry Racing, because they've done a fantastic job of developing the car, as we see Crawford Brown and Samuel Kruger side by side at the Dunlop Care, and Kruger just about able to hold on for now, but it speaks volumes about just how good a team Emil Fry Racing is, that they're able to develop the car the way they did, and they've moved since then to Lamborghini, and rightly are being rewarded for it, as they're running what is effectively the factory program this year in GT World Challenge Europe. So
yeah,
they are a
very
not
competitive team.
They're a phenomenal team, and the fact that they actually managed to build and develop that car themselves and make it as competitive as they did actually really does speak volumes as to how well they did with it. Seems to recall Christian Klein racing that car a few years ago in what was still the Blancpain Endurance Series, and Klein being someone I actually grew up watching in Formula One back in the days. And Nate has a big old moment at the exit of the NGK chicane, as we see Chris Brook, I think that was coming into the pits there in the McLaren.
No,
I stand corrected, it wasn't him, it was Trebek coming into the pits.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm always your second hand.
Oh, cheers. Yeah.
But yeah.
Crawford's down to 4th. I think Crawford's had a bit of an off somewhere. Kruger's now gone up 2nd, Lacey 3rd. Warden's there as well. I think Warden's dropped back a few positions as well, which says to me that there might have been a little bit of an incident somewhere on that lap. Wait for them to get through sector 1 before you can ascertain who's where. It's showing Warden as being in 3rd place at the moment, actually, in the Lamborghini. In fact, I can just spot his car there on the helicam. That's Gomez up into 5th there in the BMW, challenging Crawford Brown. Crawford's lost actually quite a bit of time to Lacey and Warden, about 7 seconds. He hasn't pitted. And then you've got Birch and Kostadinov and Kruger in the background. Kruger having dropped back massively as well. So I'm wondering if there's been a bit of a coming together on track somewhere between some of the leading drivers. Either way, no doubt if there is an instant report built in, it will be looked at. I'm currently looking at Gianni Lenz in the very distinctive liveried Aston Martin in magenta and cyan. yeah, definitely stands out. You can spot quite quickly which one is his, as Pinners comes into the pits for his first pit stop.
Yeah, after fighting D-Bug, I guess. They both...
Yeah.
It was really satisfying seeing them both at the same points on the racetrack, even though one's going to the pit.
Oh, yeah, and actually one thing which we did see there as well is the old pit entrance chicane that used to be a very common feature on many a circuit back in the day before pit lane speed limits were much of a thing, to actually try and slow the cars down so they weren't entering the pits at, well, in a Grand Prix car's case, over 170 miles an hour. So
yeah, especially if they're coming off the Nordschleife. I know some in the 1980s, 1976, especially when, well, isn't that the year that Niki Lauda had this massive crash?
yeah, on the that little left-hand kink just before Bergwerk, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He was life saved by a number of his fellow drivers, in fact. Brett Lunger, Harold Ertl, and Arturo Mazzario, all on the scene helping save the Austrian driver's life.
Yeah,
that
also
day.
Kruger has pitted and is now in P8.
I don't think Kruger has pitted. It's still showing as him as having not made his first pit stop.
Has he not? Because he's dropped back massively then. So something must have happened, because Lacey is in P2 and Warden's in P3, followed by Crawford bound.
Warden probably seeing us put the camera on him and deciding not to come into the pits, despite having just started to cross the blends line a little bit, which is I can't actually remember, unfortunately, off the top of my head, the sporting regulations with regards to that, but no doubt that might end up actually getting looked at a little bit.
What? Sorry. What was the thing that might get looked at? Yeah.
Eddie doing a cracking job so far in third place in the Lamborghini.
Yeah,
Lamborghini.
Go on.
Oh, so the Lamborghini being renowned as one of the more interesting cars to drive in the game, but Eddie really getting some good pace out of that. Harry Hossie in 17th is right on the back of Billy Hutchinson once again, as Craig Gilbert-Wood has come into the pits from in his Lamborghini. As Hutchinson, you can see laying two massive 11s on the track as he put the power down coming out of the corner in the Porsche, maybe getting on the power a bit too early. Did a very good job to actually correct the slide and keep the car pointing in the right direction, to be fair to him. So good driving from Hutchinson, although that would have allowed Hottie to close the gap up a little further, in fact only by 1/10 of a second. So that's quite interesting indeed. Pinners is showing as being in the pits once more. We're currently looking at Dan Birch in the Nissan GTR.
As he said her name, it was like, I've got to switch to this guy. Sorry.
No worries. And Birch in the Nissan. The Nissans were pretty quiet last time out at Misano, although then again the big front-engined Nissan not really best suited to the relatively tight confines of the circuit on the Adriatic coast in Italy. I've just noticed a little bit earlier on that Pinners has actually just made his final pit stop, so he's clear to go to the end now. Currently on board with Pinners, and his last lap time, a 2:40, does indicate that he has indeed made a trip to the pit lane. Just also noticed that Will Day, who's about 22 seconds behind Pinners at the moment, has also made his final stop. There's Xavier Eugeni in the Jaguar. And he's got Gianni Lenz actually pretty close behind, very close company actually in the Mercedes Arena section now, where the Jaguar isn't brilliant, to be quite honest. Eugenie actually last time out was involved in an absolutely terrific freeway scrap for position and managing to hold off Martin Chafer's Ferrari for a good few laps, and Simon Trebek in the Bentley on the one circuit that is fantastically unsuited to the Jaguar.
Where is Martin Chafer? Is he not racing today?
I don't think Martin's racing tonight, unfortunately. There's a few drivers who aren't racing tonight. We've got, I think Magnus Dahlgren has pulled out through illness, and Radek Schuller has dropped down to the reserve list for McLaren as he is focusing on the culmination of his master's degree, which, as a master's student myself, I know, I can see where he's coming from, and that's going to be quite interesting, and best of luck to Radek with his studies, and hope Magnus feels better soon for next week's race. There's a few others missing tonight, not able to race, tonight as well. As still looking at Dan Birch, he's just lost a position to Todor Kostadinov in the Lexus. The big Lexus being quite an easy car to drive, I found, from experience. Now looking at Adam Kozłowski in 9th place, with Sam Kruger right in front of him. Just see the front of the Nissan sneaking into camera frame there, as Kruger is still battling Dan Birch just ahead of him in the Nissan. All the big front-engined cars here from 4th down to 14th, actually, with the BMWs, Bentleys, and the Jaguar as well. Still Jack Alexander leading from James Lacey, as we see Kruger here having to take quite a defensive line there, and manages to hold on to the inside through the Wortsteiner curve for 8th place, It's now got 2 Nissan GTRs in very, very close company now, as Atkinson's really close onto the back of Kozłowski in the last lap or so. None of them coming into the pits now. You see Kozłowski in quite an interesting position, actually, because he's pretty close to Kruger's Mercedes, but also well aware of the fact that he's got his teammate behind him, and actually another one of his teammates just creeping into camera frame there as well in Reitzma in the 1-2-1. So coming through the Mercedes arena once more, as Xavier Eugenie, I've just noticed, has come into the pits in the Jaguar. Still checking to see who is where. It's still relatively stable so far. It's most of the drivers opting for a slightly later trip to the pits.
Yeah.
So far,
it's like I know what Penner's trying to do, which I thought was a decently smart idea, of trying to do his double pit stops first, so then he can just get on with the race and overtake people and avoid traffic effectively.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the strategies play out in the last 10 minutes or so of the race, but still cracking battle going on here between Birch, Kruger, Kozłowski, as Kozłowski's had another look up the inside of the Michelin curve. Kozłowski seeming to be noticeably faster than Kruger through the Michael Schumacher S. Head through the Advan curve now, up into the NGK chicane. Kozłowski, that's not the sort of chicane where you can go too wide. It's pretty quick, actually, in 3rd gear. That chicane, Kruger going a little bit wider there at the Coca-Cola curve. I know they've recently renamed a corner to the Hyundai N curve. I can't remember if it was the Coca-Cola curve or not, or one of the corners leading to or from the Nordschleife.
Do you reckon it might be the chicane? Because
It's not the chicane, I know that much. Unfortunately.
It could be one that's like got an N sort of. I doubt it'd be the first like.
I know it's not near like most of the Grand Prix circuit. I think it's one of the corners either leading to or from the Nordschleife or the Coca-Cola curve around that area that have been renamed. Do
you reckon it's actually coming out of the Nordschleife onto the GP straight? Like, you know, after the main straight on the Nordschleife, the fat one. Then you come into, you go up. Is it? Wait, it goes downhill and it goes uphill at the end, doesn't it? Yeah.
I'm actually looking this up as we speak.
Well, yeah, to settle the debate.
To try and settle this, and it's not actually coming up with.
Maybe it never happened.
Yeah, maybe I'd misread something on Twitter, which, well, not for the first time that's happened, but would also help if I could spell. Okay, never mind, that will do. Doesn't appear to be open on. Oh no, it's saying have to update Twitter, but which I won't. Meanwhile, I've just noticed its track is still showing as fast. I thought it was actually starting to rain briefly for a moment. In fact, it is actually looking like it might be raining in the next 5 to 7 minutes, and of course, changing. It is raining as well now, so it's quite interesting because pretty much the entire field, I'm assuming, is on slicks at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely raining because I've just seen it go from fast to green, and the wipers on. So Pinner's strategy means he has to do one more pit stop.
Yeah, and Will Day just behind him. So from what I understand is that these. Well, I say these. Basically, the whole top 18 have actually pulled a bit of a blinder here, because this will count as one of their pit stops. The fact they're having to change from slicks to wets, although I'd imagine Jack Alexander and James Lacey will be doing that maybe slightly later than others, given how quick Porsches are in these sort of greasy conditions.
I mean, yeah, I did a Nurburgring race, which was like a greasy track, about on Sunday, I think, actually, and it was basically if the track was greasy like it is now, you just simply have to keep on slicks. Even though it's hell, it's quicker. It's a lot quicker, but it's hell. So it'll be interesting how many people either spin out or cope with these conditions, or it depends what happens.
Yeah, as well. Speaking of which, I think that one of the Nissans has had a massive tank slapper in the background. I think that was Atkinson in the 112 car. Maybe having to. Indeed, that is, because Atkinson's lost a position where Reitzman was able to just nip past. No doubt Atkinson probably turning the traction control up a click or two in the Nissan after that. Indeed, there is a Hyundai N curve now. There is. They've the Nurburgring have been doing some resurfacing work at the end of last year as Kwiatkowski comes into the pits, and there is on the Grand Prix Strecker at the Nurburgring, the Hyundai N curve and entrance to pit lane was being resurfaced.
Oh, so this could be interesting. Also, right now we are on board while watching Nate Newcomer, who kindly set up our stream today, so thank you to him. But we are watching him in the Jaguar trying to pull away from Debug. It says
it's not Debug. That Debug's come into the pit, so is Chris Brooks, so is Kwiatkowski. That's Kevin Shepherd in the BMW.
Yeah, it is. So Newcomer's trying to get away from Shepherd. So before this wet stint that they're about to have, because if you look at the top right of your screens, you will be able to see the weather demographic, I believe.
And it's just changed again.
Yeah, it's all over the place. So some of these drivers are going to have a headache after this race and throughout.
There is going to be some fairly interesting pit strategy, because what the drivers might actually be more tempted to do now potentially is to just try and tough it out as best they can on slicks, or maybe quick pit stop for slicks, get the first pit stop out the way, out the pits, few laps on wets in the although then again it's not really that wet though, so you're just going to burn your tyres up more than anything and risk having one of the tyres go pop, as Crawford Brown is just getting past a couple of back markers there, right onto the back of Eddie Warden, good friend of his. And Eddie and Crawford both actually shared the Lexus Crawford is driving at the moment. Crawford going to have a little look up the inside.
Oh, that was
just about pulls it off. A little bit of a hip and shoulder there, as but Crawford manages to get third from Eddie. Hugo Gomez in the about 5 seconds or so behind them. Carapo in 23rd has come into the pits for his final stop, but Eddie Warden there in down to 4th place in still the first of the Lamborghinis, as Damien Vilk is in 13th and just making his first pit stop, and then Harry Hottie is in 15th and Craig Gilbert-Wood in 22nd. So we're about halfway-ish through the race here at the Nurburgring. It's Jack Alexander leading from James Lacey in a Porsche 1-2 at the moment, with Crawford Brown up into 3rd place in the Lexus ahead of Eddie Warden in the Lamborghini. Hugo Gomez is 5th for BMW ahead of Todor Kostadinov in another Lexus. Can be good points hauls for Lexus and Porsche today at this rate. Sam Kruger is in 7th place for Mercedes, with the top 10 being rounded out by the Nissans of Dan Birch, Berno Reitzmer and Tom Atkinson. Nate Newcomer is in... Toby, sorry. Don't worry, it's not the first time I've done that. I actually, on one occasion, accidentally called Sam Kruger Simon for the entirety of a race. Before actually realising the error of my ways. I'm profusely sorry about that. Nate Newcomer is in 11th place ahead of Kevin Shepherd in the BMW, with Gianni Lenz in 13th for Aston Martin. Damien Vilk is in 14th place now. He's battling away there with Kozlowski in the Nissan, so there's every chance this might change. And in fact, Kozlowski's just got back up into 14th around the outside, but has he gone too wide there? Side by side coming out of the Dunlop care. Although I think Damien is going to have the line here. Oh no, they're going to try going too wide through the Schumacher S, and Damien just losing the back end a little bit on the exit there. And that's enough to let Kozlowski back through. Debug 16th, Xavier Eugeni 17th for Jaguar, Maddow 18th, Chris Brook 19th, and Sergio Lemke rounding out the top 20, as the likes of Kostadinov, Kruger, Birch, Newcomer, Atkinson and Reitzmer are all in the pits at the moment. Harry Hottie is in 21st ahead of Craig Gilbert-Wood in 22nd, both in the Lamborghini, ahead of Pinners, who's just come in for pit stop number 3 in the Audi, ahead of Billy Hutchinson in the Porsche. Joao Carapo is in 25th place in the McLaren, ahead of Damien Lowe and Giorgio Minda. Unfortunately, who's now up into 27th, is Giorgio. I think we may have had a couple of drivers DNF tonight, unfortunately, so far.
Will Day and Simon Trebek.
Ooh, it's a shame for Simon, because he was running quite well, actually really rather well earlier on in the big Bentley Continental GT3. Meanwhile, Eddie and Crawford are still right at it as Jack Alexander comes into the pits from the lead, who will probably drop down a good few positions as a result. And Damien Vilk there just coming out of the pits, having made his final pit stop in 16th place, which puts Damien actually in a very, very good position indeed in the Lamborghini. He can hold on to it. In fact, it's yellow flag somewhere on circuit because somebody's gone off, but back to green flag now. Todor Kostadinov doing well there. There's Debug in 12th place. Kostadinov's actually got someone right behind him. That's not for position, actually. That's one of the McLarens, excuse me. But either way, Kostadinov has come into the pits for his second and final pit stop in the Lexus. Meanwhile, Mad Al in the Aston Martin has got Chris Brook all over his rear wing in the McLaren. Both cars very good in the wet. Mad Al just outbraking himself slightly there, I think. And that's enough to let Chris Brook through at the Michelin curve. Chris Brook already pulling a couple of cars lengths through the exit of the Vorsteiner curve. And up the hill towards the NGK chicane. And through here now in the dry on an optimum track. That chicane's usually taken in about third gear. It's phenomenally quick in a GT3 car, and in fact the World Endurance Championship used that iteration of the chicane 1 year as well, and I dread to think what speeds the big LMP1 hybrids were going through there, in all honesty, as Mad Al comes into the pits once more. There's a quick look at right, so there's a Xavier Eugenie, excuse me, has just come into the pits behind Al for his second and final pit stop as well. As the likes of Damien Lowe and Giorgio Minja still yet to make their final pit stop. Kostadinov, I say, is in a very, very good position indeed, actually. The little green next to his number indicates that he's made both of his mandatory pit stops, and he's currently the highest placed driver on track in that situation. So he is in a good position for a strong points haul here at the Nurburgring. Some of the leaders like Eddie Warden and Crawford Brown still yet to make their first pit stop, with 10 and, well, just over 10 and a half minutes to go. Hugo Gomez in the BMW coming out of the pits now. There's Toby Atkinson in the big Nissan GTR. Can't quite tell. I think, no, James Lacey also, excuse me, yet to make his first pit stop, but notably Gomez, I think, is still showing. Oh no, it's just just waiting on the timing screen to update. But Gomez just behind Alexander in terms of which drivers have made their first pit stop and are highest up through the field. Some close racing still going on here as we're looking at Debug and Atkinson. And still fairly close at the sharp end of the field as well, but Debug putting in a very, very strong performance indeed so far this evening. We're currently looking at the battle between Joao Carpo and Damien Lowe. Damien still...
Where is it?
Yeah, to pit.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I clicked.
No worries.
On the wrong person.
No worries. Damien yet to make his final pit stop, so in terms of relatively where they are, he'll probably be roughly, depending on how quickly he can do his pit stop, he'll be roughly where Pinners is at the moment, maybe a little bit further behind, Kind of looking at Sergio Lemke battling with Reitzmer. Reitzmer having closed up masses of time there and able to just sail past on the run down the hill to the Dunlop Care. Gets it stopped nicely as well and drops Sergio down into 16th position in the Mercedes. Mercedes good in qualifying, but perhaps maybe not the easiest car to drive, as Sergio well and truly proves that, as I was saying that, by just getting onto the paint there, onto the curbs, onto the gravel, and having one hell of a job to actually try and keep it not only pointing in the right direction, but out of the wall as well. And he did a fantastic job of that, if I may say so myself. Brilliant bit of car control from Sergio Lemke, whose heart rate no doubt will have jumped quite significantly at that precise moment in time. Nate in the pits from 10th place. And we're currently looking at Eddie Warden, who is still hanging on to the back of Crawford Brown's Lexus. Three of them still yet to pit. The track's actually improved to greasy, so no doubt they're thinking that going for the tough it out, hope for the best and see what happens approach as James Lacey pulls into the pits from the race lead. Should drop him down to about 4th maybe. I'm guessing, based on where he was in relation to Crawford, Eddie, Jack and Hugo. Xavier Eugenie in 21st place still, with Billy Hutchinson in the Porsche right on his gearbox. See, there is also a noticeable dry line on the circuit.
Yeah, they're taking the inside just to cool those wets down, I think.
Yeah.
Some people on wets. I think these guys might be because they're quite late. As we just see Eugenie go a bit of a defensive move there into turn 1. As we're going down into turn 3, coming out of the Mercedes arena. Billy Hutchinson trying to get the best of cutbacks, I guess, with this Porsche. With its on the steering wheel when you put the power on. But once you're coasting a bit and you're braking, it does really well. Yeah,
as Billy Hutchinson also making use of having a good couple hundred kilograms of engine over the driven wheels to get a very good exit out of the Mercedes arena and move up a position as well. Kevin Shepherd in the pits in the BMW, as is the McLaren of Chris Brook, who's battling away with Kostadinov there. Kostadinov going to jump up a position very quickly and easily. As Reitzmer in the GTR going past as well. And Lacey manages to come out of the pits, actually. We mentioned him earlier on in 4th place, about 15 seconds behind Jack Alexander. In fact, you can see Billy Hutchinson's car in front there.
Oh, stream's done something. Anyways, folks, what's going on else on track?
The leaders have pitted. I can see that much.
Yeah. Both Crawford Brown, Eddie Warden, Jack Alexander's still out on track as he just passes him on the main straight. The Scottish man does.
They're all going to have to pit in the next. So it's 4 minutes 46 seconds now. It's about 2:12. So it's going to be this lap, or it's going to be the next lap or the lap after for everyone to make their final pit stops, I'd imagine. Then again,
do they have to do 2 now?
Yes.
Yeah.
2 within the pit window. And then again, we are running this based off of my attempts at maths, which is interesting at the best of times, to be honest. And put this way, there's a reason why I'm doing sports journalism and not mathematics, because journalists attempting maths is very much a case of trying to do 2 + 2, and half the time you end up with 5. So you might want to take some of that with a pinch of salt there, as Dan Birch very hard on the brakes. In fact, maybe a little bit early before the pit entrance line there. So that might have actually cost him maybe a couple of seconds. There's Toby Atkinson doing the same. To be fair, given the track conditions right now, I can actually understand why they're not wanting to risk it too much, as T-Bug does likewise coming into the pits. Crawford Brown and Jack Alexander staying out on track. Kostadinov in a very good position, back up into 8th place now, as he has made those pit stops earlier on. So that's going to be good for him. Still got Kwiatkowski ahead of him, yet to make his final pit stop in the Nissan. So that's going to means that Kostadinov, once this is all shuffled around, should, I'd imagine, be around 7th place. See, Birch has lost 5 positions because of his pit stop there. So Kostadinov has jumped up from 11th to 8th. So by my calculations, that should be good for Turdor in the Lexus. Meanwhile, Jack Alexander and Hugo Gomez are making their final pit stops now, which means that likes of Crawford Brown and Eddie Warden are going to be cutting it really fine here. Actually, we're looking at Crawford. He's in the Mercedes arena right now. They've got just over 2 minutes to go. So yeah, they are going to have to pit this time around.
Guys, Hugo Gomez is coming out the pits now, followed by Adam
Kwiatkowski.
Yeah, he's just gone into the pits now.
As the sun comes out over the pit straight at the Nurburgring, to hence the slightly dodgy karaoke on my end.
Don't worry.
Don't worry, it's even worse. Don't worry, it's even worse after about 7 beers. Or 8. As I managed to prove just this weekend gone past in Cambridge. So, meanwhile, Reitzmer and Lemke are both into the pits. They've just about made it through on time. It's going to be interesting to see how long is left on the clock when the likes of Crawford Brown and Eddie Warden make their way past. There's Chris Brook there at the Michelin curve. Oh, he loses in front of Pixel, and Pixel with, Gianni Lenz, excuse me. Gianni absolutely nowhere to go there, and Chris Brook trying not to make an unsafe rejoin. Gianni Lenz, unfortunately, had absolutely nowhere to go there. It's meant that the, I think that's the Porsche of the race leader just going past as well, Jack Alexander.
Imagine
Lenz cutting
imagine if a race leader got caught up in an accident.
It would have been tight.
Goes into pits and Crawford Brown is.
Only about 15 or 16 seconds left, so they've timed it brilliantly. Is Kruger going to be able to get into the pits in time? He just about, by only a handful of seconds, manages to get into the pits, does Sam Kruger. So no doubt that's going to drop him back a couple of positions. It's still a Porsche 1-2 at the moment, with Jack Alexander and leading from James Lacey. And then this battle here between Crawford and Eddie. And then after that, we've got Sam Kruger, who's just exiting the pits now. So he's currently showing as being in 6th place behind Hugo Gomez, and has got a time penalty to top it off. A stop and go 30, presumably for speeding in the pit lane. I was wondering if we were going to get through the race without a someone getting a stop and go penalty, and it turns out we very, very nearly did. But Sam just being a little bit too eager with the either on the exit of the pits with the pit lane speed limiter, or a little bit too late on the way in. So that's going to drop him down quite some way, actually, as Damien Lowe having a little bit of a moment there at turn 1. On board with Billy Hutchinson in the Porsche now, with Xavier Eugenie in the grandfather clock right behind him, because let's face it, that Jaguar wasn't exactly the newest car on the field when it was racing. In fact, it was a bit of an antiquity. In fact, by the time it was actually racing in the game, it had already been superseded by the F-Type, as someone's gone off big time at turn 1, unfortunately. I can't quite make out who that was, but someone has just had a big old moment on the way in there. Didn't seem to actually stop terribly much. There's Gianni Lenz, also not Gianni Lenz, excuse me, that's Craig Gilbert Wood going off there in the Lamborghini. I think that might have been another Lamborghini that had gone off as well. Maybe Hottie, because it was a blue car. I'm not 100% certain though. Gilbert Wood really struggling in that Lamborghini on this very greasy circuit, with Chris Brook right behind him there. Sam Kruger comes into the pits for his stop and go penalty. Hoping he doesn't actually get another stop and go penalty afterwards. So down in 7th place at the moment. I'm Hugo Gomez we're currently on board with in 5th place, but it's the next BMW of Kevin Shepherd who is having
the inside.
That's them trying to get past Gilbert Wood. in the somewhat recalcitrant handling Lamborghini. But Kevin Shepherd in the second of the BMW M4s has had an absolutely phenomenal race so far this evening, up into, by my calculations, certainly 7th place, given Kruger's stop and go penalty, which he should finish serving sometime around now. And in fact, he's just coming out the pits. He's dropped all the way down to 17th, actually. So he's dropped a long way down indeed. Shepherd up into 7th, Newcomer 8th, Kruger down in 17th behind Birch, Kozłowski, Atkinson, Vilk, Reitzmer, Al and Lemke at the very least. Not 100% certain where Debug is on the circuit, whether Debug is going to be in front or behind. I'm looking for a spot of blue there, as there's a car just rejoining the circuit right on the racing line there. That's Kruger going up into 16th place. So that was Lemke who'd gone off at the Valvoline curve. And with a fairly interesting rejoin on what is, okay, admittedly a very narrow part of the circuit. I'm wondering if Lemke is starting to suffer a little bit on the tyre front as well. Jack Alexander's checked out pretty much. He's well clear of the field. He just has to basically keep the car on the circuit at the moment, and he'll probably win the race. The famous last words, obviously, of a motorsport commentator. Not that motorsport commentators have ever put the commentator's curse on anyone before in any series whatsoever. James Lacey is running in second from Crawford Brown and Eddie Warden. Doesn't appear to be all that much between Crawford and Lacey, though. Bit interesting. Johnny Lenz there just in front of Lacey and Warden. This is going to be a bit interesting for these guys, as they've got a little bit of lapped traffic ahead of them in the form, well, I'll say a little bit there. You've got Gianni Lenz, Xavier Eugenie, Billy Hutchinson and Harry Hottie.
Also, I'm going to be riding on board with Jack Alexander for the last lap of the race, which is now, hopefully.
Although there's still plenty of time for this to be resolved, as the leaders, the group in second, third and fourth are still trying to negotiate their way through traffic. In fact, there's not an awful lot at all between Crawford Brown and James Lacey in the battle for second place. As the last timing split they went through. In fact, Lacey is still just about holding on. There's these guys are all racing each other. In fact, Crawford has dropped back massively because I can see the Porsche, I can see Eddie Warden's Lamborghini. These guys are all racing each other and trying not to take each other or the leaders out, and it's quite the mess going on there. There's Eddie Warden in third, so I think Crawford has actually been involved in a bit of an incident somewhere while trying to get past this battle going on here. Hugo Gomez is in fifth place. There's Crawford Brown just in front of him, so Crawford has lost. This must have gone off somewhere while trying to fight through the laps traffic, as he's dropped back massively. James Lacey's actually clear of all of this lot now, as I think that's someone's just run wide there, maybe Lemke or Eugenie.
But yeah, Jack Alexander's just finishing up this race, currently just coming through the kink before the chicane, and yeah, going quite quickly into this one, going through the last through curves of this event, coming around the Coca-Cola curve, and Jack Alexander is going to win
again.
He's again going to win.
He's unbeaten so far. Yeah,
unbeatable. He's even slowed down. What a guy! What a guy!
He's even slowed down and he's pulled up at the side of the track. So he's already crossed the line and jumped back to the pits. James Lacey's in second, just about holding on from Eddie Warden in third. There's Hottie, Brook and Lenz and Hutchinson all cross the line. There's Crawford Brown and Hugo Gomez doing likewise.
Can I quickly go in there and ask for the replay just to be saved, just in case?
Yeah, certainly. Kevin Shepherd is up in sixth place at the moment. If he holds on to this is going to be an absolutely fantastic result for Kevin. Just waiting on him to come across the line now. I can see that Eugene's crossed the line, Goncalves, Carpal's crossed the line as well. Waiting a little bit here on some of the other drivers. There's Kevin Shepherd just about holding on from Kostadinov to take sixth place on road. Nate Newcomer doing brilliantly in the Jaguar to come home in eighth place on a track and in conditions that really aren't suited to that car at all. Is going to be Gilbert Wood getting the Lamborghini to the home in the end there. There's Birch and Kozłowski crossing the line. Meanwhile, Toby Atkinson is just about going to hold on from Damien Vilk in the battle for position there, and they just about managed to hold on. There's Mad Owl and Reitzmer, Debug, Kruger and Lemke. That's 13th through to 17th. They're just, in fact, Mad Owl's just crossed the finish line there. There's Debug going out to the Coca-Cola curve now, and he's going to hold on to his position there. In fact, he's showing having gone past Reitzmer on the last lap. So there's Reitzmer in the GTR just coming across the line and drilling Debug up the hitting Debug from on behind at some speed there at the end of the race, with both drivers having already crossed the start finish line. So after all of that, by my fairly rudimentary calculation, so it's going to be Porsche and Jack Alexander still at the top of the standings, following another 1-2 finish and yet another win for Jack Alexander. There's BMW, Nissan having had, and Lexus having all had very strong races as well. So that's going to be something to keep quite a close eye on as we head through the next round of the season. Coming up on RWB International, we've got on tomorrow night, we have a bit of fun on Wreckfest. Should be good for a laugh. And then we have the Pro Rookie Series on Thursday. A little bit of old school GT1 action on Automobilista on Friday evening. And then on Saturday night, we've got the upcoming round of the RWB Formula 4 Championship on Race Room. So there's plenty of action still to come. My thanks to Nate for hosting the stream. Thanks to Ollie for the camera work and jumping in on comms.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one for sure, and I've definitely enjoyed spending my time in here while I've had a very busy day. But yeah, it's been enjoyable.
Yep, another fantastic race in the RWB Constructors Championship Season 6. We'll be back same time, same place for more next week. But until then, as always, it's bye for now.